Live from Dublin and around Ireland, theatre takes centre stage. Streaming live and focusing on the issues, the art, the craft, the makers. News, hot topics and artist features. From theatremaker.ie.
Tonight I'll be talking to Aimee Van Wylick, creative producer and the national coordinator of Culture Night. She'll be joined by Ray Yeates, City Arts Officer for Dublin City Council, as we focus on this island-wide event taking place on the 18th of September. I'll be talking to Liam Fitzgerald, representative for the Associate of Irish Stage Technicians, on the EPIC Working Group, as we highlight EPIC's pre-budget submission and the hashtag ThisIsWhoWeAre campaign. We'll then be joined by Emma Martin and Kevin Coquelard about their project Bird Boy, part of the Young Radicals initiative with the Dublin Fringe Festival. Also on tonight's show, Nora Hickey M'Sichili, Muireann Kelly and Eanna Grogan. I'm Kelly O'Doherty and this is Stage Door Live for the 16th of September 2020. Hello and welcome back to Stage Door Live. As always, we've got a wonderful lineup for you tonight, but beforehand, we want to welcome our first guests. A big thank you to our patrons. We're delighted to see our Patreon community growing. You can support theatremaker.ie and Stage Door Live for as little as €5 a month. So do check us out on Patreon if you're enjoying the show. Now it's been another busy week in the news, so let's check out some of the headlines. Yesterday, Taoiseach Micheál Martin released a new 5-level plan for living with COVID-19. This replaces the roadmap for reopening, which expired in August. In a press briefing, Taoiseach Micheál Martin stated, effectively Dublin is on level 2 with some modifications. Under the level 2 restrictions, organised indoor and outdoor events have new capacity guidelines. Indoor events in theatres, cinemas and other arts events, excluding sport, are permitted up to 50 patrons and in pods groups of up to 6 if appropriate, and up to 100 patrons permitted for larger venues. Organised outdoor events are permitted up to 100 patrons for majority of venues, and up to 200 patrons for outdoor stadia or other fixed outdoor venues. However, these new increased capacity guidelines are not yet in effect in Dublin, where a concerning spike in COVID-19 cases has many people worried that another lockdown may be on the horizon. If Dublin were to regress to level 3 of the plan, no organised indoor gatherings would be permitted to take place, while organised outdoor gatherings would be limited to a maximum of 15 people. The National Campaign for the Arts was in attendance of a briefing from the Department of Culture, Heritage and the Gaeltacht for the new government plan. While they have not issued a statement responding to the new roadmap, there will be an online sector meeting to discuss the plan as well as their recently launched pre-budget submission tomorrow afternoon. The submission, which was published on Monday, introduced 9 measures that could be taken to save the arts. Among them are the extension of the PUP and EWSS until mass gatherings are permitted again, the increase of the funding to the Arts Council to €135 million in 2021, the increase of the funding to Culture Ireland to €10 million, and the establishment of a cross-departmental task force. The NCFA offered worrying facts and figures in the explanation for their proposal. According to the proposal, 89% of NCFA members are living with financial uncertainty. 91% of arts organisations are reporting €2.9 million loss per month since March 2020. The impact of the evolving economic crisis on the arts sector will be between minus 34.6% and minus 42%, compared with minus 11% in the Irish economy as a whole. The event production industry COVID-19 working group also launched their pre-budget submission earlier today. The proposal features 9 key points, including the reduction of VAT on ticket sales to 5%, a stimulus package to support sole owner businesses and small businesses and venues, and confirmation that the recently announced cross-departmental task force will be a long-standing body with representation for the commercial live event sector. The launch of the pre-budget proposal comes in the middle of the Live Entertainment and Event Industry National Awareness Week. In addition to their pre-budget submission, Epic have also organised Light It Red, which sees theatres and venues across the country lighting up red in solidarity with the hashtag ThisIsWhoWeAre campaign. These pre-budget submissions come after a funding announcement from Minister Martin last week. A total of €6 million has been made available under 2 major divisions. The allocation of €5 million under the Live Performance Support Scheme is being made available to assist commercial venues, producers and promoters of live performance and provide employment to workers in the creative industries. An additional €1 million will be available under the Music Stimulus Package, which is dedicated to supporting musicians and their teams. Announcing the new measures of support, Minister Martin said she is pleased to announce this funding response that will assist established commercial venues and promoters to employ performers, artists, technicians, creative and performance support staff up to the end of 2020 in anticipation of the return of audiences to live performance. And there is some good news regarding the pandemic unemployment payment, which has been a primary concern for artists and arts workers for the last 6 months. The PUP will now remain open to new applicants until the end of the year, despite being scheduled to close this week. Irish Equity confirmed last night on Twitter that artists and arts workers who obtain once-off or short-term work, such as festivals or gigs, will be able to temporarily sign off for the duration of the job before signing back on to access their PUP claim again. According to Equity's clarification, there is limited scope for a self-employed person to engage in once-off or emergency work and still retain eligibility for the scheme. However, work that is of a regular nature or generates significant income would exclude artists and arts workers from reclaiming their PUP payments. In funding news, the Association of Irish Stage Technicians have announced the opening date for applications to Round 1 of the AIST Hardship Fund. The AIST Hardship Fund is open to all crew and production staff in the live events, arts and entertainment industry in the Republic of Ireland. The first round will disburse €100,000 at up to a maximum of €500 per applicant. Awards will be distributed on a first-come, first-served basis, and there will be no assessment of need beyond the requirement to meet the minimum criteria. Awards will be distributed until the allocation of funds are depleted for that round. Applications for the fund will open at midday on September 25th. In programming news, the Barbaro International Arts Festival for Children is now open for booking. This year's festival takes place from the 5th to the 18th of October and will present over 20 live events and online experiences in art spaces, public places, on the airwaves and in our imaginations. For those who won't be able to come, the organisers of the festival have arranged readings of picture book stories in the Irish language from iconic spots around Galway in a collaboration between Barbaro and TG Cahir. The Leòr Academy have announced the programme for GradFest 2020. The annual GradFest productions, which would usually be held in July, had been postponed this year until September in light of COVID-19 restrictions and the closing of All Trinity College Dublin's campus. The 4 shows are designed and directed by MFA Stage Design and MFA Theatre Directing students. This year's programme features Image of an Unknown Young Woman by Eleanor Cook, directed by Katie O'Halloran. Constellations by Nick Payne, directed by Elizabeth Kate Lovelady. Salome, or The Cult of the Clitoris, a historical fallacy written and directed by Mitchell Polanski. And Wishlist by Catherine Soper and directed by Gerard McCabe. The Abbey Theatre announced this morning that tickets are now on sale for The Great Hunger, a historic partnership between the Abbey Theatre and IMMA. The Great Hunger is a new production of the epic Patrick Kavanagh poem, featuring 16 actors and 10 musicians, co-directed by Katrina McLaughlin and Conal Morrison. Staged in Promenade on the grounds of Royal Hospital Kilmainham, The Great Hunger runs from the 1st to the 10th of October. Following the lifting of restrictions at midnight last night, it was announced at 11 this morning that tickets would go on sale at noon. Tickets via the Abbey's allocation were sold out within 10 minutes and on DTF's site within 30 minutes. And Wexford Festival Opera have joined forces with RTE to present this year's reimagined festival, Waiting for Shakespeare. The festival, In the Air, will be an online celebration starting on the 11th of October and running over 8 consecutive days. According to a statement on their website, the festival aims to bring together audiences and the wider worldwide Wexford community through the power of music. Events and performances will be streamed and broadcast across rte.ie, Lyric FM, rte.tv and wexfordopera.com. And for the next 3 weekends, you can see the circus from your car. Circus Vegas will be located in Leopardstown Racecourse and have 2 to 3 shows per day every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for the next 3 weekends. That's all the news we have for this week, but be sure to check out our weekly blog, The News That Didn't Make It, tomorrow for some international highlights. And you can check in at theatremaker.ie throughout the week for news as it happens. If we missed anything, please do send us your press releases and suggestions to news@theatremaker.ie or slide into our DMs on social media.
If you find value in Stage Door Live, please help us grow by letting your friends and followers know. If you're watching on Facebook, hit that follow button and give us a like. Take a moment to share this live feed with your friends and followers right now. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel and click that bell to keep updated on our new and exclusive YouTube content. Your support helps us continue these important conversations about Irish theatre now and into the future.
A big thank you to everyone who has joined our Patreon community. Your support is invaluable. For as little as €5 a month, you can become a patron of Stage Door Live and support the work that we are voluntarily doing. We're not a funded organisation, nor do we consider ourselves a business, so please consider supporting us. We're posting a link in the chat now, and it will also be in the description after the show. I am delighted to now welcome Aimee Van Wylick and Ray Yeates to our show. Aimee is a creative producer and managing director of Boxroom Productions. She is also the national coordinator for Culture Night. Ray has worked in the arts, primarily theatre, for 40 years and is currently the City Arts Officer with Dublin City Council. Glad to have you on the show, Aimee and Ray. How are you both keeping?
Very well. Hello.
Can we just test the audio? Okay, great. Sorry. Thank you. Great. Sorry for that, folks. Okay, so Aimee, I'm going to come to you first. What is the purpose of Culture Night, the mission statement of it?
So Culture Night has been, for those obviously who are not familiar with Culture Night, it has been running for the last 15 years. So it's the 15th year of Culture Night. And it was established in 2006 by Temple Bar Cultural Trust, actually, which is partly owned by Dublin City Council. So it was established in Temple Bar. It was a very, I suppose, a small initiative, which was mainly geared at, I suppose, opening doors to galleries and art spaces in Temple Bar. And it took its initiative from similar initiatives in Europe, like Kulturnacht in Scandinavia, or European Museum Night in Europe, essentially. And in Dublin, then it started to grow larger outside of the Temple Bar kind of periphery. And in 2008, it actually became a national event. So every county now in Ireland celebrates Culture Night, and it takes part in Culture Night. And I suppose the ethos and the mission statement of Culture Night, originally it was set up as an audience development really exercise, and to incite people and initiate people into that kind of cultural space in their local environment. So that's been kind of the idea behind Culture Night.
Yes, Aimee, it has certainly grown, because isn't it true that it's close to 400,000 people taking part and getting involved across the country this year? That just shows that the enthusiasm has grown, and it's been massively successful.
Sorry to cut in there, Kelly. It would have been, obviously, in previous years, we would have reached those type of numbers pre-COVID times. So Culture Night this year will be a very different story altogether. I mean, there's lots of events planned for Culture Night this year in a kind of a hybrid format, with online and offline in-person events taking place, but we're not expecting the same, I suppose, in-person engagement as in previous years. That said, we should be able to reach larger audiences through online, I suppose.
Exactly. Everybody's getting used to being online now, so you might see people taking part from their sofas this year, which would be exciting too. So Ray, over to you now. Culture Night, it started small as a partnership with Dublin City Council and the Temple Bar Trust. How has the collaboration changed with the Culture Night becoming an initiative of the Arts Council, and now under their wing? Does this change the outreach?
It's hard to know, because it's the first year that the Arts Council have been in charge. So I think for the Arts Council, and now for anyone else working Culture Night, we're in a learning place, trying to figure out the relationship between what the event was, which is very much a cultural event with the arts as a central part of culture, and if it's with the Arts Council, does it become primarily an arts event? So that debate's ongoing at the moment. I mean, this Aimee has been very modest, because this event, quadrupled since she took over the national coordination of it, and the department's involvement, RTE's involvement, the local authorities' involvement around the country, needed that kind of boost. And we're also now dealing with the problems of its enormous success, because probably everybody wants to feel that it's their Culture Night now. And we've also had to deal with, like last year, with over 100,000 people coming onto the streets in Dublin. We even have crowd control and security issues that would never have been envisaged in its earlier years.
Yes, well, you won't have to manage those crowds this year anyway, Ray. With obviously, it's very, as Aimee pointed out, very, very different year for you this year. But Aimee, I'm going to come back over to you now. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the money. Okay, how do we know that this is a good return on investment? Are more people engaging more in the arts now, following on from their experience of Culture Night?
I suppose it's a key question in terms of gathering the stats, in terms of the return on investment. I think, I suppose, honestly, it's hard to tell. That said, the fact that the engagement through Culture Night, or I suppose the draw of Culture Night, and the fact that it's grown exponentially over the years, there has definitely been a return on investment in terms of the popularity of Culture Night, the brand recognition of Culture Night. It is kind of it's imprinted in people's minds now. I mean, I hope a lot actually. It's a very recognizable event. It draws people into their local area who then also subsequently spend, be it consume in cafes or pubs or etc. on the night as they go out. Again, that's talking on previous editions of Culture Night. This year will be different, of course, and the sector has suffered. So, but it has drawn a lot of people into the city or into towns to consume culture, and then also secondarily they're consuming other elements. So I don't know if that completely answers your question.
That's definitely clearer. So I mean, I suppose even the phrasing of return on investment, it does speak to money instead of the process or the product from the artists. So how exactly do we quantify the effect of this event on the cultural sector throughout the rest of the year?
Yeah, and it's very interesting that it's like saying, look, what use is Culture Night, But that maybe is probably not is a strange question. It's rather like you'd be saying to people playing football, why are you playing football? It's a celebration and an expression, a wish to showcase culture to each other. And it's very broad. You could have churches opening, Dáil Éireann opening, Masonic Lodge opening. It almost seems strange to ask them why they're doing it. They want to share, and they want people to be involved. And it's a great night for children to run into galleries and stay up late. And so it is a spontaneous kind of celebration. And
yes,
it's a very in comparison to its scale, it's very low cost. I think all public officials would say in return for its impact economically, I would rest and taxis do incredibly well on Culture Night in the cities. So, but it's very difficult to apply economic analysis to arts and culture, because it's better to look at it indirectly. If you force it into the economic argument, it's not going to be as good as if we put that money into, let's say, startup businesses. But are you saying that there won't be any arts and culture because it's not economic? It is both economic, but it's also more important than that. It's more important than money and more important than its economic value. And we're not going to be able to have an economy if, as we know now, if we're not well and healthy, there's no economy, And so it's part of our wellness to express ourselves. And when we feel good about ourselves, we perform very well economically.
Yes, that's true, Ray. So, how would you see the difference between culture and art, and why is that difference important when we're talking about free to the public events like this?
Yeah, you see, I don't know. These are complex matters. Do you know what I mean? And they're not complicated, though. Although arts people, including myself, love to complicate everything. But they're complex, though, because culture includes sport, it includes spiritual expression and religion, it includes sitting in the park. Any form of kind of human appreciation is culture.
Yes.
So you can imagine, the people on Culture Night might want to showcase how they all appreciate a particular kind of chocolate, right? That wouldn't be defined as an arts event, unless it was curated in a particular way. So it's an act of appreciation. So that very broad invitation is very attractive to people. And you wouldn't be an arts officer to know that quite a lot of the population are nervous of certain kinds of artistic events. We know they shouldn't be, that they're accessible, and if they would only go in the door of the theatre or into the gallery, they would enjoy themselves. But there's a barrier sometimes to participation. It's not always the art's fault. It's sometimes our educational thing or the right. But on Culture Night, it's like there's a big permission to pour into artistic institutions. And that can't be a bad thing, where people would feel, oh, it's great, I don't have to worry about how I feel while I'm in the gallery of photography because there's 100 other people here and they're having a great time. But the problem probably would be that it's not a very contemplative approach to culture. If 300 people are packed in the gallery, they're probably not having that kind of gallery experience that you're supposed to be having. So,
no, of course, yeah.
But it is a great intro, right? And then I think we don't know then what happens after that, right? But I can't see that it isn't a brilliant thing if an 8-year-old child ends up staring at a photograph. I don't know what the impact of that would be, but that's their first memory of going out, right? Now the payment issue is a completely other thing. I was fascinated by you guys are doing this gig voluntarily, aren't you?
Yes, and we
that's
are.
Well, there you go. That happens a lot on Culture Night. So I could end up, and Aimee could end up at, let's say, the big acrobatic display that was in Dublin last year, where a very, famous professional acrobats are being paid to ply their trade, and there's loads of technicians being paid, and there's a big save. And then I went from there to Near FM, one of the great community radio stations, where everyone's dropping in to kind of celebrate what they do, playing the guitar, having interviews. I wouldn't say that very many people on that got paid, because you can't separate those from artists getting paid in general, because artists are, like you guys, are constantly volunteering their time. The question is it equitable and fair? And I think we have to ask that of every single thing that we do in the arts if we're publicly funding them.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, it's a bit of a chicken and an egg thing. I think as long as artists are willing to volunteer their time, there will be people and organizations that will avail of it. And, as long as we kind of keep talking about, well, it's a platform to show our work. That's why I suppose we're asking the question, is it a good return of investment, as well for the artists just as much as for the people who are going to see them? Are the artists going to see a difference in their future from when they are platforming their work? Because obviously, with funding, we as artists, we often question where is the money going in Culture Night, and maybe you guys can clarify, how it's funded. Obviously, there's a lot of organization involved. But are there artists that do get funded specifically, or do they request funding? When does that conversation happen? I'll direct that to you, Aimee.
Yeah, I suppose the way Culture Night is set up, it's by county. So even though it's a national event, it's coordinated at a local level through each local authority. So in Dublin, we would coordinate Culture Night on behalf of Dublin City Council. We get our budget from Dublin City Council and the Arts Council. In terms of programming, there are venues who are invited to register. So in Dublin, our dialogue is directly with venues. So they register for Culture Night and they program their events for Culture Night, or they open their doors for Culture Night. And they do this independently. So originally, in the early days, before my time, it changed when I came on board and with Ray in 2013. Prior to that, Dublin venues actually had to pay a fee to take part in Culture Night. So that fee, or that kind of registration fee, was abolished. And it's now free to register, which has really opened up the event. And that's why there's all these types of different venues taking part. In terms of payment then to artists, anything that we program through our main headquarters, as in through for Dublin City Council, every artist, every participant receives a fee for Culture Night. There are, however, venues that take part on a voluntary level, as Ray described earlier. And in that case, obviously, we hope artists are receiving a fee, but in some cases they're not, and they've decided on a voluntary basis to take part, but nobody's been invited by Culture Night through a local authority to participate on a voluntary basis, if that does that explain it a little bit? It is quite complex. But
that clears it up. That clears it up. That's answering my question completely, Aimee. Thank you very much. That's something that I just wanted to clarify.
Who is the contracting party? That's what we would always say. Like our policy on payment for artists in the council is it equitable? Like I think it's different in the Arts Council, but our only way of policing this would be if we examined, on a random basis or on a couple of events in Culture Night and said, look, it's obvious to us that the curators got paid, the venue got paid, the technicians got paid, and the artists didn't get paid. That's not equitable. But if nobody got paid and the artists participated voluntarily, knowing this, so for example, in a show where people do shares and they decide to put their funding into the set and into marketing, and they decide to split the box office, that's equitable if the artists have agreed to it. But we're examining it in Culture Night. You could examine it all over the country for all artists working and say, is this equitable? That's the question. Are artists being paid equitably alongside all other expenditure on arts events? That's the big question.
Yes. Do the artists approach the council to put on their work, or do the council reach out to artists that they want to participate?
So I suppose this is where originally Culture Night is about venues opening their doors on the night to build audiences. So there hasn't been kind of a history of Culture Night programming artists directly, if that makes sense. We invite venues to take part and open their doors, and predominantly they would have that programming, I suppose, liaison with the artist directly. That said, in Dublin, for example, we would program into public spaces, and Ray mentioned the aerial piece from last year with the acrobats, which was a really impactful piece. But every person that worked, that was a commission for Culture Night, funded by Dublin City Council, and everybody who participated on that got paid. And then this year, for example, to replace the public program, the outdoor program, because due to COVID, obviously we have the issue with we can't encourage mass gatherings. We put out a call out called the Dublin Liminal Space, and we invited artists to respond to that. So that was a call out through Dublin Culture Night to participate in Culture Night and to submit a proposal for a project that responds to this call out. And each of those artists, we commissioned 4 this year. They all got a fee to produce that work.
Wonderful. And can you tell us a little bit about the 4 works that you commissioned then, Aimee?
Yeah, so of course. So one, Ray will know this from last week, because the pre-record of that event, because they're all online pieces, the pre-record of that event actually made it in the news. It's with a performance artist called Paul Regan, who floats down the Liffey, actually. So I don't know if I should give away too much about the way he floats, but he's definitely not sinking. It's a beautiful piece, and it's presented with a sound artist. It's a video piece, and people will be able to see that on Culture Night. It'll be premiered on Culture Night. The musician Eanna Grogan did a kind of homage to Dublin City Parks. So they recorded her performing at dawn and at dusk in city parks. So it's really beautiful, because for her, that was a kind of a thank you to the parks and the city parks. I suppose she spent so much time during COVID in those parks. So it meant something really powerful to her. We also had Tom Lane, the composer, do a piece on the Liffey Bridges with narration by Olwen Furere. And I'm terrible now. The 4th one escapes me, and I feel terrible.
No, that's fine. They all
to me in a second.
Come back to it, man. Come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'll come back to you. That piece that's based in the parks, that sounds lovely, because they were really a lifeline to people during COVID. So that really does sound beautiful. So Ray, I'm going to come back over to you now for this question. So what do you feel are the role of Dublin City Council, Culture Night, and institutional bodies or organisations in moving the conversation past this one night? How was that achieved?
Well, I don't know. Like some people say to me, like established venues would often say, "Well, Ray, look, every night's culture night." You know what I mean? For us.
Yeah.
But other people say, "No, isn't it great for us to have had this opportunity? We to showcase our venue, our church, our work of art or whatever." Like moving it past there, like I people work in the arts every day trying to develop and support organizations, people who participate and learn through the arts, and audiences. So making Culture Night work, like people have said to us as well, paradoxically, they've often said, why don't you have a culture weekend? And I said, well, you really would be pushing it now. So many people give such voluntary work on the one night of Culture Night that you could have to triple the funding to get it into the Saturday and Sunday, because people would say, look, I gave last night, I'm not giving on Saturday and Sunday. But taking it further than that is actually trying to get, I think it already has worked very well. Like you'll see major politicians, major institutions all recognizing the artists of the country on Culture Night. The question always is, when will the funding be enough funding? How much funding do we want for the arts? Now, people are saying we want the European average of, which is, about a third or to a half greater per head of population. That's when I think we will be reaching where we want to be in the arts. But you've got to remember too that local authorities and other departments are often not counted in the contributions they're making to the arts, and businesses are not counted. But it's all insatiable. Every time you come up with funding, for example, Dublin City Council are doing $1 million of expenditure on sculpture, and already people said to me, it's not enough. So no matter how much we produce, it's never enough. But the extension
and
of
you can only do so much with what you are given. You're given a certain amount. So I mean, we can't be asking the earth of these events if the government isn't helping these events out more and providing more funding. So I agree with you on that. Completely right.
I think it's something about being in the arts community, that it's a vulnerable community usually.
Yes.
Like people are not in the arts because they're great at business. And those that are in the arts that are great at business are usually very successful. A lot of people in the arts need that support. They need, a helping hand. They need to be understood, because developing an art form is enough without having to develop a huge administrative ability, a huge producing ability. So you'll find that skill set divided in an arts organization. Like I'm very interested in the unheard voices, the developing voices, the new voices. Like I'm very interested in you guys. Like the minute I heard about your podcast and all the great work you've been doing, my antenna went, that's a developing new idea. And if we intervene early enough, we could help it sustain. That interests me a lot. And Culture Night provides those opportunities as well, But I think but where it goes from here really is, it brings the arts onto the national stage in a huge way every year. Unfortunately, at the moment, people are looking at it saying, what's in it for me?
Yes.
Really what it is, what's in it for the country is huge. And it has already been a major contributor to the increased investment in the arts coming out of the recession. Culture Night's been a very big part of that. Right? It's now, don't get me wrong. I don't think anyone's, complaining and saying, I don't believe in the Oliver Twist approach to the arts. But I think that the kind of empowerment that's going on in the arts right now is something I really, really welcome. What the National Campaign for the Arts is doing, how artists are empowering themselves, how they're fine. And I think that would be a great positive legacy of the pandemic, is artists and the arts community finding their voice. That's the outcome that I'd be looking for. And also beginning to understand what Aimee has to do between the programming she invents and the programming that is allowed in, and that is its own responsibility to fund itself and reach a certain. And Aimee does not interfere with what any venue wants to do on the night. She doesn't say you shouldn't be doing that. They're entirely in charge of it in every way. But she's there to support it in marketing and in PR. And that's where a lot of her spend will go.
Yes.
If every venue was to get paid, Culture Night would become unaffordable straight away. It grew up in this massive celebration, but it's got so big now that people are saying, well, you know, we better resolve all of its contradictions. And we probably will do that. But it's got so successful, it probably does need to get much more money and much more support over the next couple of years.
Yes, well, hopefully, fingers crossed, that will happen. And as you said, the NCFA are doing Trojan work to get more money and more support, headed our way in this direction. And thank you as well for appreciating what we do, because our team works very, very hard. And, you know, this, as you say, we're doing this voluntarily. And I have to give a massive shout out to my whole team, because it's just, you know, I'm the host, but there's so much happening behind the scenes to keep this show going. And yeah, a bit of money and a bit of funding from an organization would be nice down the line to keep it going, keep it sustained. But for the time being, we are happy to get the word out there about all of this important work that you guys are doing as well. And thank you so much to both of you for coming on and having this important chat. And I wish you all the best for Friday night. And I hope it goes off without a hitch, and well done on all your hard work, because I know you guys had obviously a lot to deal with between COVID and everything else. So yeah, good luck, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aimee and Ray, for joining us tonight. If you haven't already planned your Culture Night this Friday, we'll provide a link to their full lineup after the show. I had the pleasure of speaking with Muireann Kelly, Artistic Director of Theatre go Leòr, a unique Scottish theatre company producing innovative and contemporary theatre in Scottish Gaelic. Let's jump into my chat with Muireann. Hello, Muireann. Cumara hahu.
Ha me gleva, stuhin.
That I'd answer in a bit of Gaeilge there. So what's the situation now, Muireann, with live theatre in Scotland?
We're at a difficult point. We had hoped to have an announcement last week, actually, and because of a fairly recent spike in numbers in particular areas, including Glasgow, unfortunately, they decided to defer the announcement regarding theatres and other venues and gigs. And the date we've been given just now is the 5th of October. But, you know, we're kind of all crossing our fingers, but at the same time being quite realistic, because obviously schools have gone back here much earlier than in Ireland. They went back mid-August. Colleges, unis have gone back. So it may be that it gets worse before it gets better. I'm hoping that will not be the case, and that we'll get something on the 5th of October before we all go mad. For companies like ours, so we're in a situation where there are a small group of theatre companies in Scotland that are part of a portfolio of regularly funded organisations, that Creative Scotland, which is the Arts Council fund, and we're very grateful for that funding. That basically pays for our programme of work, and we have a small base in Glasgow, but we tour. We're one of the few companies that tour all our productions, so we tour all over, right through out to the Gaeltacht, the islands, everywhere. And that presents challenges in these times. And so we've had to shift a lot of our work to different platforms and online, and still try and connect with artists all over Scotland. And our focus became really about freelancers and how we could develop as much work and development opportunities for them while they're stuck at home.
What has the engagement been like, Muireann, with your online stuff that the shows that you had to shift online? Has it been good engagement?
Yeah, so we supported one, and I directed another of the National Theatre Scenes for Survival in association with Theatre Leòr. So that's just come out last week. And that's a bit like the Dear Ireland series that the Abbey did, similar sort of setup. We also filmed a short film for the Scotsman session. So the Scotsman's one of the newspapers here in Scotland, obviously, and the arts section have decided that they will try and provide opportunities for artists to make a short film of their work. So because we were kind of mid-tour, as you said, in Mime, we'd just done a week in Glasgow and about to do 2 weeks around Scotland when the lockdown hit in, we decided to do an extract from Mime. And so we had 2 of the performers involved and the music, and we also had some shots and footage from Bernard and Harris to kind of contextualise the piece. So
yeah, tell me about how Theatre Leòr came about then, from the seed.
Yeah, so I'd been working as a freelance actor, I'd done some directing, and had 2 kids along the way and various other things. But I was approached by Oran Moore, which is a venue in Glasgow, and the artistic director at the time was quite keen to have they do kind of play a pie in a pint. It's a lunchtime theatre set up, and they're short plays, just under an hour, and people can catch them on their lunchtime. Pardon me. And I think they were very keen to include a Gaelic play, but they didn't want anything too traditional. I hadn't really thought about it too much, but now that they were looking for a play, I had made a connection with Catriona Alexi Campbell, who is a writer, a Gaelic writer, who was the Gaelic Associate that year at NTS, the National Theatre Scotland. And I was doing a bit of research for them. And yeah, we just started thinking about what that could be, what that could look like. And out of that came a play called Doris Dúnche, which I think you'll know what that means. Closed door.
Closed door, yeah.
It was a kind of thriller, actually, if anything else. And no reference to the Gaelic language was made throughout the piece. Why we were doing this in Gaelic, or that it was about Gaelic. It just was in Gaelic and made sense because the 2 people who were involved spoke Gaelic. And I kind of took that as the starting point that, why do you need to address these things? Yeah. You just make work in whatever language you're making work in. And it was really interesting, got a good response, and we thought about doing more work. And I suppose initially we were project funded, so it was all the challenges that anybody faces setting up a company and waiting for project funding, and it was slow to start, and I was still having to work in between times, freelance. But yeah, eventually it picked up pace, and then in 2018 we were awarded regular funding. So yeah.
Brilliant. That's always good news when you hear those 2 words together, isn't it? Regular fund.
Yes, it was a lot. I have to be honest, it was a lot of hard work.
Can you tell me, Muireann, a little bit about what the Gaelic speaking community is like in Scotland?
There is a huge concern at the moment that the population that's most in danger is actually the native speaking population in communities in the islands and highlands. And it's by and large the same problems that face the Gaeltachts in Ireland and the same in Wales. Minoritised languages those areas are not being supported in terms of work, opportunities, education, the arts, second home ownership, all those huge questions that come up. People being outpriced and they can't, their kids can't afford housing, so they move, and they're moving away for university and whatever, and they're not coming back. And generally underinvestment as well, and a kind of not really a focused strategy about how we can better that situation so that in 10, 20 years' time, there will be native speakers left. It's a much more serious
situation. Greater incentive, Muireann, like for people to learn the language, like that there needs to be more funding available, more grants available, more work available for people who are native speakers.
Yeah, I think that's a visibility issue, to be honest. I think for sure work in the areas to keep them in those areas, be it online work or work within the actual communities themselves. I think an interesting thing to come out of this pandemic is how people are working at home now, and maybe it has opened people's eyes to what's possible online. In the arts, obviously, there are lots of questions to be asked about community arts and engagement within communities. But also there are venues, you know, on a professional level, there are venues in islands like Lewis on Long. There's a regularly funded mainstream arts venue. And then where's the support for the work that's been made on that island going into that? And then where's the support? You know, it's all those similar questions, I'm sure, to the questions that are happening in Ireland. I would say that when people do make the effort to learn, it opens up a whole host of opportunities. And that's why I keep trying to invest in writers, because without writers, and the same with actors, you know, they'll always fluctuate and go off to telly where they'll make more money, because that's what happens. But that's fine if they're learning new skills and they're staying working in the languages. I wouldn't confine somebody to say just because you're an actor or writer and you have Gaelic or Gaelic, you should only work in those languages. Far from it, you should work in whatever language to get as skilled as possible. I mean, one of the reasons we make work is because we want to make sure if you live in Bada or, you know, Lewis or Harris, that you're going to see the same show as somebody can see it in Glasgow. Because to me, I'm really, really passionate about the fact that I grew up in Mayo, and, you know, the only theatre I saw was if we went to Galway or we went to Dublin. I feel passionately that everyone should have access to. Access is so important, and it shouldn't matter whether you live on an island or now. That, bearing in mind, I know that costs money, so maybe the answers are a combination of touring and maybe putting more work on within the communities themselves, or developing the resources within the islands and the Gaeltacht themselves. But I would say that if there are artists in Ireland who are definitely working in Irish who want to connect with us, get in touch. We've got a website and all the information is there, theatregalore.com. And yeah, we're actually developing a piece at the moment that will be in Welsh, Irish and Gaelic. So we talk all the time to artists, choreographers, designers, you name it, who work in minoritized languages.
Thank you so much, Muireann. This has been such an interesting chat. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you for joining us on Stage Door Live. It's been lovely to have you.
Okay, thank you for having me.
We'll provide a link to Theatre Leòr's website and the short film they made based on an extract from Mime. We had to edit this interview for our live show, but the extended interview will be available on our YouTube channel after the show. We're delighted to welcome back Liam Fitzgerald, chairperson of the Association of Irish Stage Technicians and member of the EPIC Working Group. EPIC has just released a pre-budget submission calling upon the government to scaffold and bolster the sector until the time when it can reopen. Welcome to the show, Liam.
Thank you very much.
Now, Liam, when you were last on the show in early April, there seemed to be little recognition of the struggles that the live event sector were facing from the government. Has anything changed over the past few months?
Well, in fairness, yes, it has. It's been a steep learning curve for some of the people we've been talking to. We have, in fairness, though, there's been a lot of education done. There's been a lot of acknowledgement of that. There's been a good few of them have talked to us directly and talked to members of the different groups. And they've realised what goes into these things behind the scenes. They've realised that when they get up to make the speech at the Ardèche, that there are people on the sound, there are people on the set who made the set, who designed it, there's the lights, the cameras, the crowd management of the venue. There's a lot of stuff goes into an event like that, and they're starting to realise what's around them more and more, and they do get it. The people who we've been talking to have acknowledged that yes, there was issues about understanding what we do, but they have been, I won't say completely resolved, but the baby steps have been taken, and we're getting there.
Well, that's encouraging, at least, Liam, that there has been some progress being made. Minister Martin announced that a task force is being set up for the arts and cultural sectors. What kind of representation does the live event sector need in this task force, and what are the hopes for it?
Well, the task force that has been set up, we understand is going to be meeting quite soon. They have asked for one representative from each of the funded and non-funded sectors, you might say. We hoped there would be more, and we still hope they may alter that in time, that there will be more representatives. They will bring in experts from various fields to take opinion over the length of the task force. It has to report by the end of October, so it's quite a tight time frame. It's going to be under pressure to get that achieved. But they have at least got two people so far who are being put in place to represent I suppose you might say the two sides, but realistically it's far more intertwined than that. The two main facets of the industry, and to try and give the task force make up as much of the on the ground feedback as possible. The task force has, in its terms of reference, an awful lot of state bodies and state department representation on it, which is a good thing. We need all those people there as well. It would be helpful if there was a few more of the people who actually put the events on as well. Yes, we don't want to get rid of any of the other people, but we just want to, I think a broader opinion base would be good. And we're just going to have to feed back.
You guys are the experts, they need the expertise if they know how to, if they're going to know how to proceed and how to make things better for you guys. So there should be, a wider representation of what you guys, offer.
Yeah, no, we certainly will be inputting into it. It's kind of a tight funnel that it has to go through, because there's a lot of people and a lot of associations have to feed into one person, and then on a second person has to take in a whole mass of influences from another sector of the industry. So it's going to be a heavy workload for those two individuals to try and funnel all that information in. We can't say it wouldn't be better if there was more people, but the task force being set up is the most important part.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And Epic submitted its pre-budget submission today, as we mentioned earlier. So would you talk to us, talk us through the most important points and the aims of the submission?
Yeah, there's they're up there on the website. There are 9 points in total, but keeping the compact. The most important one, the first one of all, is the restoring of the PUP, the Pandemic Unemployment Payment, and the employer's wage subsidy back to its previous levels. We are right at the point when people are coming off mortgage breaks, rent breaks, and the SMEs are coming off the allowances that have been made in loans and such from banks. So right now we're cutting the levels of the support right when it's going to be needed most, and that's really difficult. We're asking for a scaffolding fund, which is essentially a block of money that can be put into place to aid stimulus packages to come up with schemes to support the SMEs in the industry. And we're hoping that scaffolding fund would be at least equivalent to the Arts Council budget for the year, bearing in mind that the commercial sector sell roughly 90% of the tickets in the state versus roughly 10% of the funded sector tickets. So we feel there should be a proportionate amount of support given to the industry. Also, given that it's going to be a short duration support in the grand scheme of things, we are realistically talking about 18 months of support at most. There are things like rates waivers, changes to VAT and tax credits that are there targeted at the SMEs, and the extension to the loan guarantee scheme. There's a loan guarantee scheme there with the banks aimed at the SMEs, but it's difficult. The banks get guaranteed up to 80% of the loan, but they don't even want to take the risk on that other 20%. So particularly for our sector. And then confirmation that this task force would be a more long-standing body. We feel this task force or another equivalent of it has reason to be there on a permanent basis. We should be able to approach the statutory bodies in the industry and discuss issues as they arise on an industry-wide level, rather than just necessarily one promoter or one producer or one venue having to fight every battle every single time, whereby it'd be nicer if it could be all sorted out at a simple national level.
Yes, absolutely. And Liam, earlier in April, you were kind of, we were talking about the danger that there would be quite like a mass exodus of people from the sector if they weren't supported, because their skills are so transferable to other sectors. So have we seen any of that at all? Has there been an exodus, or are people sticking with it and hoping that the government pull through and support them for the next 18 months?
No, unfortunately it started. We
Okay.
have several of the SMEs have failed at this stage, and some of them have been bought by foreign investment, some of them haven't, and they've been shut down. We've seen friends and colleagues leave the industry. We've seen people start to get disenfranchised and look for alternatives. In the last few days, I've spoken to people who have decided that they had enough was enough. It is going to get worse over the next month, because as I said earlier, we are now at the point whereby the support from the banks is starting to run out. The loan breaks, the mortgage breaks, the rent breaks, all these things that were put in place. And people managed to scrape by on the PUP and TWSS payments that they got previously. Now we're at the point whereby those are being reduced. And while you got by when you had a mortgage break or a rent break, now those are back. It simply is impossible to make ends meet. We can't blame people for needing to make ends meet, but it is forcing them out of the industry. Yeah, absolutely. And you guys are so important to the industry. That's the killer. There's no one we trust more, like with our safety at the current time, than our colleagues in the live events and technical theatre sectors. And that's what you guys have always done. So where do you think the disconnect is from, I suppose, the powers that be in understanding the work and time that goes into live events? We've actually, to give credit, we've actually had some feedback that the NCFA had a meeting with the minister and the head of NEFIT, I believe it was, that was about a couple of weeks back. They have given certain feedback that they don't have as much concern about what's going to go on inside the venues as necessarily getting to and coming from the venues. And this is kind of scary for us, because there's a lot of it is outside our control, is where the concern is. Like we can manage within the walls of the venue pretty well, and we always have and we always will do, and we can manage the queuing into the venue and we can manage stuff like that. But if you're going to a show in a Centre City and Theatre in Dublin, we can't control what happens in Euston Station to get there. Yes. That's the transport to and from is beyond our reach, and to try and police any great area beyond the venues, be it a theatre, an indoor and outdoor venue of any sort, is going to be cost prohibitive, given that we're at a point whereby we're at reduced capacity as well. So by the time we turn around and have to have extra stewarding out that maybe has to reach 500 metres from the front door rather than 100 metres from the front door, and whatever fencing and whatever barriers that's going to entail, that we're extending our area of responsibility out into the community at that stage. And that's, it's financially impossible based on the reduced capacity. So that's very scary for the industry to be told that what is most concerning from the public health professionals' point of view is things that are completely outside our control. So we really hope that this task force is going to start feeding into that process. And when we get an opportunity to talk to not only the public health officials, but also the local authorities, the guards, the HSE, the HSA, and other involved parties like that, that you're going to start seeing some real proper solutions coming up and finding out. Because during the process yesterday, when they were laying out our new 5-level plan, it was fairly scary for a lot of individuals. They were, and a lot of SME owners, to think that we are at level 2 now. Or Dublin's at 2.5 maybe, but we're at level 2. The best it's going to get is level 1 for the next 6 to 9 months. That's a long time to be dealing with the levels of restrictions that were talked about in level 1. Never mind going down. We hope there might be a level 0 at some stage, because it's a long time to be dealing with 6 to 9 of that level of restriction. And we want to keep people safe. Obviously, that's our job. We do that every day. That's our primary concern in staging any event of any sort, of entertainment or non-entertainment. But it's mostly about the supports as a result. If that is the future, and there's an educated group of people making these plans, I'm assuming that they're basing it on realistic information. So it makes it even more important, the budget submission that we put in today, because it is all about the supports for the industry to keep the industry alive. If this is the reality of another 6 to 9 months of those level of restrictions before it even gets up to above what's in level 1 now.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right there, Liam, when you were describing the situation as scary, because it is scary to think that there are some people out there that, who've been working in this industry for so many years, have so much expertise, and yet they're leaving the industry because they're not being supported. So, but you guys, you've announced, the AIST has announced the opening date of applications to round 1 of the AIST Hardship Fund. So how can people apply, and what are the requirements for applicants?
Absolutely. We're delighted that, and first thing I should really say is absolutely the biggest thanks on behalf of all those that will get helped, but also on behalf of the board of AIST, to the EPIC group, who did an amazing fundraising activity with Songs for an Empty Room, and the overall campaign of the We Are the Support Act that went with it, and the crew merchandise and all the different fundraisers, and some of them are still to come. There's a golf event being organised by Brezzy. There's still funding going on. We're still getting approached by small bands and venues and big venues, but who can put it together to raise money for the fund. And we're delighted that these events have happened, and a huge thanks to the EPIC group for making that happen. But as to actually we need to get that money out there now to people who are actually in crisis. Everybody has had a hard time. Everybody's been in difficulty, but for some, that difficulty has become critical. And while we're not under any impression that we are going to run the industry off this fund for any amount of time, but we are possibly going to take people just a little bit back from the edge that they might be at the moment. And we're hoping that the people who are most in need are going to come forward and not be shy about it, and not be embarrassed about it, and ask for the help if that's what they need. The first round of funding, we decided to do it in rounds, so that, because there are critical times throughout the year, and that can tip people over the edge. Right now, we've got people sending kids back to school and stuff like that, and that can be very difficult. We've got people coming to the end of their mortgage and rent relief breaks, so that's very difficult. But further into the year, you've got things like coming up to Christmas, when there's an awful financial pressure on some families and some individuals. So we're releasing the first €100,000 of the fund in the next couple of weeks. The application date is the 25th. It's the Friday. I hope I've got that date right. But the bottom line, the easiest thing to do is look at the website, AIST.ie, and go in and look at the Hardship Fund page. There's information there. The most important thing to say is don't contact in advance. Your applications won't be accepted until it opens. It opens at midday on the day. So send the email at the date on after the midday, and make sure that you fill out the requirements. It's not that we're not assessing need. We looked at the whole process of how to do this. It's very, very similar to the fund that was set up by the Civic in Tallaght. And the most important thing is we wanted to get as much of the money raised out as possible to the people who need it. So we're not spending money on assessing need and processing and doing charitable expenses and stuff like that. This is purely get the money in and get it out to who needs it. So it's first come, first served basis. As long as people meet 4 very basic criteria. They have to have worked in the industry, they have to have lost work, they have to be a resident in Ireland, and they have to have an Irish bank account. That's just money laundering laws. We have to do that. We can't do it any other way. But the only simple criteria are you have to work in the industry and you have to have lost work. It's very, very simple. Well, after that, we just want the people who need it most to come along,
Brilliant. Well, it's fantastic that's available for people, Liam, in this critical time, as you said. And you were mentioning earlier on, we were just talking that Dublin is at a 2.5 level at the moment. But we've just had some breaking news in there that the government has decided to hold 2 unscheduled meetings on Friday, triggering the likelihood that Dublin will be elevated to level 3 of the COVID-19 alert plan by the weekend. So that's going to be quite a big change again, going back a bit. And particularly
I wonder if I'd be shocked. But,
I'm not shocked myself. I think we were kind of readying ourselves for it, but I feel like I have to take a deep breath and make myself a strong drink after the show now. It's just definitely.
It was odd that we didn't just go in there in the first place, because it seemed a bit crazy that they would announce everyone's at the same level, apart from a few extra restrictions being placed, and then 3 days later you're suddenly saying, well, they had that information, obviously, so it seems a bit of an odd decision, but it's not unexpected.
Yes. And I wonder now if Culture Night is going to be affected. We just had obviously Aimee and Ray on talking about the events on Culture Night, so we'll see. Time will tell if it's really good funds. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, I want to continue our chat, Liam, and I just want to ask you, obviously, a new campaign, the hashtag ThisIsWhoWeAre campaign has started, and it must have been really encouraging for this sector to see many buildings and institutions lit up in red last night in solidarity and support. What are the goals of this campaign?
Yeah, we were delighted to see the uptake from across the industry. We saw an awful lot of buildings, different sizes and scales, from some of the biggest to the most compact across the industry being lit up, and people supporting it and getting it out. The main goal, it's actually pretty simple, almost one goal to the whole thing, is to raise the awareness. Yep, I'm probably somewhere in that picture. So the main goal is to raise the awareness amongst the public and the TDs to the point whereby we convince the budget to be influenced by our budget submission and by the other budget submissions that have gone in from the different groups. Like, the bottom line is, this country is run in a really simple way. It's the same as most democratic republics around the world. We have a cabinet of ministers. Those cabinet of ministers listen to a small number of TDs. There's only 165 of them. If we can convince those people to influence those cabinet, then policy gets made. So right now it's a very simple task. What we've got is we've got as many people out there to try and influence their TD as possible. That's the simple ask,
Okay, brilliant. Well, hopefully that message will get out to our viewers this evening. Get onto your TDs and, support this campaign. This is who we are. Thank you, Liam, so much for joining us.
I was just going to say, if they go to epicwg.com, that's Epic's website, there is a page there called This Is Who We Are, and it has a link to the Uplift website, which emails your TD. You just pick your constituency. It takes 30 seconds. Click on the link. You pick your constituency. There's a pre-formatted email there. You can add to that if you wish, and you can take away from it if you wish, and it will email your TDs for you, and we will raise the awareness to the point whereby the budget is favourable to our industry.
Well, you heard it here first, lads. Get your fingers on the button, go to that website and send that email. It only takes 30 seconds and it helps the sector out hugely. So thank you so much, Liam, for coming on and talking us through all of that. You guys have been so busy, and fingers crossed that the work that you're putting in now pays off and that you get that support from the government.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, Muireann. Cumara hahu.
Ha me gleva, stuhin.
That I'd answer in a bit of Gaeilge there. So what's the situation now, Muireann, with live theatre in Scotland? Yes. You just had a treat of seeing Muireann again, just in case you didn't catch it the first time. But guys, that full interview will be available on our YouTube channel later. It's not the interview that we want you guys to see now. So from Scotland to France, we are delighted to be chatting with colleagues all over Europe this week. I had a fantastic chat with Nora Hickey M'Sichili earlier this week about her work as director of the Centre Culturel Irlandais, the Irish Arts Centre, and the Irish connection in France. Keep an eye out for the best backdrop we've had on the show to date. Bonjour, Nora.
Bonjour de Paris.
It's lovely to have you joining us all the way from Paris today. Thank you so much. So you're in the middle of a very busy week over in Paris, preparing for Culture Night. So before we talk about Culture Night, can you first of all tell me about the Culture Centre itself and its mission?
Okay, so we're in Paris. We're based about 10-minute walk from Notre Dame. I was just down there this morning, and we are in the Latin Quarter, so a very important historic centre for Paris. And unusually, I suppose, unlike, say, the centres in London and in New York, we weren't set up by a diaspora or with a diaspora in mind, but actually rather to showcase Irish arts to an international audience. And we are in an amazing building, which was the Irish College. So for many years, there were students here, priests, seminarians, lay students as well, who studied in this building. So we have 45 bedrooms at the moment. Probably there would have been a lot more. They would have been much smaller some 100 years ago. But we have 45 rooms, which is very unusual for an art centre. So we have, and especially where we are right in the heart of Paris, beside the Pantheon. So we have an ongoing programme of residencies, and we've artists coming through all the time, and we present work to the public, obviously, too.
Oh, fantastic. That's so interesting. So could you tell us now what your events are for Culture Week?
Okay, so at the moment we're installing an exhibition by Stephen Brands, and we have, obviously it's more complicated this year. Stephen isn't here for the installation, so that's happening via Zoom, or at least he's helping direct via Zoom, and we're working with Eanna Young, a gallerist who's been with us here for a month and a half, so she's going to lend a hand as well. And we have a number of residents who will be doing readings on Friday, so Kimberly Campanello, Anne-Marie Curran. We'll have open studio, so there'll be a bit of a buzz certainly around the place on Friday night, Culture Night. We do have an interesting project, though, that we're working on with the French Embassy in Dublin. And it's a digital project. So we'll have artists here in the centre who will be drawing using digital media, and that will be broadcast or projected onto the National Gallery in Dublin.
Wow, that all sounds like, yeah, it sounds like you've been very busy here. So because Culture Night represents the return to live events for the CCI, how was the centre and the city affected by the lockdown?
Well, the centre, obviously we closed to the public. So come the 15th of March, we had to unfortunately close to the public, and it meant that our whole weekend, you know, obviously like Ireland, we had a big festival planned for St. Patrick's Day. We didn't, however, close altogether. So we had artists in residence here actually for the lockdown. We had David Kitt, musician in residence. We had a number of other artists as well, but David was with us for the long haul. So he actually just left at the end of August. So he was with us, I think it was close to 5 months, 6 months.
Wow.
One thing that artists say when they're here is that they're always incredibly productive. It's something about the environment. I mean, it's very stimulating because you're in the heart of Paris, and yet at the same time, for people who've been here, it's very peaceful as well. We have this enormous courtyard, 2,000 square meter courtyard, which is really unusual in the centre of Paris. And, you know, obviously there are people, the public come in and they use it and they sit in it and they enjoy it. But there are times as well when it's just for artists and for our residents. It's a really special space. Normally, artists speak to me about this guilt. It's a two-pronged guilt, because they're guilty if they don't engage with the city, but at the same time they're guilty if they're not working on their project. But there have been obviously very strong French-Irish connections, and part of the mission of the centre is to strengthen these. We work a lot with festivals, we create opportunities for Irish artists within those festivals, or we're connectors. You know, we for example, we have an artist in residence at the moment, and we just organised a studio visit for him with a curator from the Cartier Foundation, which is close by. But what's actually really exciting is that it's not just about this French-Irish relationship, because Paris is such an international hub. And you mentioned that I'm chair, or as the French say, présidente of this organisation called FICEP. FICEP is composed of members. It's a bit like kind of theatre forum, but the members are international art centres based in Paris. So you'd have the Hungarian Institute, the Finnish is our neighbour here, Japanese, you know, centres from all over the world. And so that's what's really exciting, that we actually have that network to tap into as well, and we're really at the heart of it. The office, the FICEP office, is here in the Centre Culturel Irlandais, and we're very much at the forefront of that. We have a number of roundtable conversations coming up at the end of the month, and we have a few Irish speakers, Annie Fletcher, Tom Creed, and Fergus O'Cruher, the choreographer as well. So they're involved, but you know, among many international speakers. And of course now with Zoom and online, I suppose the way we've adapted with COVID, we've opened that up, and it's a much more international list of speakers.
You mentioned obviously the library that you're in right now, and it is definitely hands down the nicest backdrop of any guest that we've had on this show so far. It's so impressive, and you know, the smell of those old books must be just wonderful, Nora.
Exactly, that's what you're missing. That's the only thing you're missing.
So, what is the community of Irish artists like in Paris?
We have we have a number of artists who've actually come over here on residency, and then just haven't gone home.
Oh, really? They've fallen in love with
it happens. They fall in love, and they've even fallen in love and got married and stayed here. And well, we have so there are some artists obviously who stay on, but there have been artists like Connolly Cleary, so Dennis and Anne Cleary Connolly, who have been here 30 years now. They're really important visual artists, and we'll be working with them and marking their 30 years in Paris at the end of this year. They work a lot with digital media. You've McDara Smith, again, who's been here about 30 years. You've filmmakers, Audrey O'Reilly. There's a nice community. But obviously, you know, there are Irish here who engage with the centre and others who don't. It's quite different to the London and New York centres, where they were really designed, you know, I suppose they came out of a need from the diaspora at times maybe to protect their culture, or, you know, to take Irish language classes or Irish dancing and to support the Irish community there. So it's interesting that the Irish government made a decision to rescue the centre, because about 20 years ago it had fallen into disrepair. And the danger was that it would be lost and no longer have this strong connection with Ireland. So at that point, the Irish government invested about €10 million in the renovation of the centre that was overseen by the OPW. And so that's really what saved the centre. And it was at that point that it was decided to turn it into an arts centre. There were so many of these international art centres popping up in Paris. Many of them were there are some that go back 50 years and 30 years. So ours is, you know, it's fairly established now at 20 years. So we'll be 20 years in 2022. I read about the centre 20 years ago. In fact, I was sitting in the kitchen with my father, and he was reading the paper, and he put it down and he said, "Nora, here's the perfect job for you." And he told me about the centre. And then between us, my father was a curator, and between us we started to plan the programme for the first year.
Oh my goodness. That's an amazing story. 20 years, that's amazing.
20 years ago. So really my whole career I have been working towards this.
Wow.
And what's really beautiful is that just before I moved over, I had a conversation with my colleague and friend Belinda Quirk, who runs Solstice Art Centre. I was telling her I was coming over, and I said, you know, what have you coming up? And she said, well, look, I have this exhibition by Michael Farrell, the Irish printmaker, who was based in Paris. And I said, I don't believe it. I said, we're going to take that show. And that was one of the shows that my father and myself had curated in this imaginary year. So it was really, it was really special. Yeah.
That is,
it was a great show too. Yeah.
Fantastic. As we were talking about earlier, it's a dream for many artists to move to Paris at some point in their lives. So for any Irish artists out there that are contemplating trying to make work in Paris, do you have any recommendations on how to start? By obviously contacting you, I suppose.
I think the Centre Culturel is a good starting point. It's a good base. And obviously if artists already have a link with festivals or venues here, you know, we can try and support that as well. For example, thinking of Broken Talkers, who were offered a performance in the Théâtre de la Ville, so great opportunity for them, and we were able to support that by offering accommodation and just having that conversation with the Théâtre de la Ville as well. And there are other partner centres like La Briqueterie, and they work a lot with Irish dancers. So there are opportunities, but yeah, I would say first port of call would maybe be the Centre Culturel, either a residency or an email or a chat with me. I'd be happy to help out.
Okay, well, merci beaucoup for that. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Nora, for coming on and chatting to us. It's very interesting, and I'm wishing you all the best for Culture Night. I hope everything goes smoothly for you, and also with all the residencies that you have going at the moment.
Thanks so much.
We'll link CCI and FISEP's websites in the description box after the show. This interview had to be edited for time, but you don't want to miss the full interview, which will be available on our YouTube channel very soon. I am now pleased to welcome another returning guest to the show. We're delighted to have Emma Martin and Kevin Coquelard joining to talk to us about their show, Bird Boy, which is part of Young Radicals with Dublin Fringe Festival 2020. Emma Martin is a choreographer and director who founded her dance company United Fall in 2015. Kevin Coquelard began dance and theatre in France, but is now based in Dublin. He made his Irish debut with John Scott in 2013 and has performed for Philip Connaughton, Catherine Young, Theatre Lovett and many more. Welcome to the show, Emma and Kevin.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, lovely to have you. So this isn't the first iteration of Bird Boy. Would you tell us, Emma, about where the idea started for the show?
So it sort of started a couple of years ago, probably in 2017 or something. And I have a 9-year-old, so she would have been, 6 going on 7. And it was around that time that I started maybe going to more children's theatre myself and bringing her along, and starting to think, it'd be really nice to maybe try and make something for her. So that's where it started. And then I kept putting it off because I was like, oh geez, making a children's show, that's kind of scary. It seemed like, it's such an honest forum in some ways that I just kept putting it off. But yeah, then in 2019 I committed to it and started making it and talking.
Yeah, how was the process? Because, was it daunting making a children's show versus making a show for adults? Like, how did the process differ?
It kind of, I think the thought of it was more daunting than the actual making of it. Because once, I suppose once I got Kevin on board, like he was the first that came into my head for this piece, and I'd wanted to make something with Kevin for ages anyway. I was watching him in everyone else's work and kind of go, oh my god, I just need to make something with that guy. But once I kind of had Kevin sign his life away, we actually got into the studio and it wasn't daunting. We sort of just got stuck in, and it was at times, there was moments at the very beginning where I was like, oh geez, am I really going to go ahead with this? And but it was actually a really fun process.
Amazing. So Kevin, over to you now. What was the response from your first test audience? Because I understand that was all adults.
Oh yeah. The first time that we previewed the show, that was with 3 adults or 4, and they were like not shocked, but their response was, "Is this for children?" They find that quite violent and dark, and so we got scared because we thought, did we make something for children, or did we make something just for ourselves? But I think those person who saw the show had the wrong idea of what children can understand or can proceed from watching it. Because the first thing that came to my mind when they told me that it was too violent, I was just like, have you never watched the Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry? Like, it's full on violence and gun and face on the rock. So yeah, I think what we think when we try to put ourselves into children's minds, we are scared, but actually children can take way more than what we think.
Absolutely. And, we had a show dedicated to theatre for younger audiences a while back, and they were saying that very same thing, that often, you know, in Ireland, you know, we don't explore dark themes enough for kids, whereas, you know, in other parts of Europe, they're very open to that, and exposing children to darker themes because they can handle it. They're well able for it. So I completely agree with you. That made me laugh about the Looney Tunes. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So Bird Boy is part of the Young Radicals initiative with Dublin Fringe Festival. So Emma, I'll come over to you for this question. What is the significance of this programme for you, and what can audiences expect?
Well, with Young Radicals, so Kate Ferris programs the Young Radical strand of Fringe, and I've known Kate for a couple of years, and I think she's sort of brilliant and a brilliant curator and everything. And I've just always the name of the strand has always struck me as being something really energizing and really bold and sort of brilliant. And I've been looking at her program over the you know, the past couple of years and thinking, God, she's really, you know, putting on quite a great range of work that's mixed form, and it's, you know, appeals to like a lot of younger kids and then teenagers and everything. So I've been admiring it from afar, and then Kate came to see Bird Boy, and she really championed the show and wanted to put it into Young Radicals. So I was just delighted. Yeah. So.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations on that. That's wonderful. So can I ask you now, Kevin, has your collaborative process changed with the current circumstances?
You mean with the show? Or in general in dance practice? With the show, it didn't. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, with the show, it didn't change that much because, well, I'm the only performer on stage. I'm not actually the only one performer, because I think like light music and stage managing is a lot. Like it's actually a quatuor, but because I'm the only one on stage, it didn't really change anything to the process.
Okay, brilliant. That's great. That, you know, because a lot of shows have been affected. So in some ways that must have been a relief. But I suppose, you know, you're a dancer, so, you know, what is dance without contact? You know, how does dance move forward in a socially distanced world?
Yeah, it's a hard question, because I've been into some process recently that we recreated a piece to make a movie about it, and we had to recreate that without any contact, and I thought it was so challenging, and I don't see how that can go any further in the future, like dance without contact, because I mean, we say like we like to move people, we have to touch them, but we're actually not touching them, but we use the word touch, and so I think touch is a really important part of live performance. So I have not the answer of this question, but I don't think it's I don't know how it's gonna work.
Yes, I think we're all trying to navigate through these very strange times. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Dance is so much about touch and contact. So hopefully they'll come up with a way of moving forward. You know,
well, I think
for you guys.
The idea of pod where there's this talk of maybe create pods for like a session of work, like for, let's say, for a few weeks or a few months, like choose your dancer and create like a place that we can all share commodities and all of that, like to be able to create a work with touch. So but it's nothing. I don't know where it goes. Sorry.
I mean that there might be a certain amount of sacrifice then that people will have to make for the art, for dancing. You know, if people do have to leave their families to, you know, to be in a pod with their fellow dancers for a while and then quarantining on the way back. But I suppose it's all worth it to keep it alive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So, Emma, you know, speaking of children and families and, you know, making work for kids, can you tell us actually a little bit about Bird Boy and what it's about? What can audiences expect?
I suppose they can expect to be thrown into a kaleidoscope of sound and Kevin being like a tornado. So we kind of meet this lone character, and he sort of seems to exist completely alone in this world we've created on stage. He's I suppose the device that we've created is that, you know, he's very much used to battling with his own mind and his own thoughts, and, you know, he's sort of invented these ways of distracting himself and entertaining himself. But actually, as the show progresses, we find out that actually he's quite an anxious character and has lots of worries and thoughts about how he is seen in the world. So you know, it's about an outsider character, really, and how he maybe learns to become a little bit more comfortable in his own skin, and yeah, sort of.
And that theme would definitely appeal to children, wouldn't it? Because there's a lot of children that go through that themselves as well, you know, wanting to to be comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's really embracing that sort of character that's different, that doesn't conform, you know, and you know, it's tough for kids. They want to just fit in and they don't want to stand out, and they that mightn't be, you know.
Oh, we might have lost.
Also, energetic and heroic and
sorry.
So, you know. Oh, sorry.
We lost you for a moment there, Emma, but you're back now. You're back, so that's good. Brilliant. That sounds like there's lots people are in for a treat.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, there's lots going on in the show, so lots of levels of understanding and of being able to read different things into it, you know. So I think all the work I make is quite layered like that, so there's not necessarily one way of understanding it. Yeah,
brilliant. So Bird Boy will be playing Drake Blanchardstown for the Dublin Fringe. And we know you'll be part of Barbaro Children's Festival as well, which is exciting. So what other plans are in place for the show?
We are performing, we're going on a tour. So in October, we're touring to Bray, so Mermaid and Bray. We're going to the Lime Tree Theatre. We are in Longford and Barbaro. So, yeah, there's a couple of venues around October time.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, well, brilliant. I hope you'll be bringing joy to many families across the country then. That's fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us, Kevin and Emma, and break a leg for your shows. And yeah, I wish you all the best for the tour as well. And we'll provide links to Bird Boy's future shows as well in the description box after the show.
Great. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
If you find value in Stage Door Live, please help us grow by letting your friends and followers know. If you're watching on Facebook, hit that follow button and give us a like. Take a moment to share this live feed with your friends and followers right now. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and click that bell to keep updated on our new and exclusive YouTube content. Creating live content is a costly endeavour. If you'd like to help us keep the conversations going, please hop on over to our Patreon page, where you can become a patron and gain access to exclusive patron-only content. patreon.com/TheatreMakerIE. You can find us on most social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at TheatreMakerIE. And catch additional news, blogs and sector coverage on our website, theatremaker.ie. Watch this space. There's more exciting content on the way from theatremaker.ie.
At 10:59 this morning, the Abbey Theatre announced that tickets would go on sale for The Great Hunger, a production that was put on hold due to government guidelines. But last night, the new guidelines finally made the show possible. At 12 noon, tickets went on sale. Actually, 12:03 if we're counting, and we should count. By 12:10, the Abbey's allocation of tickets was sold out, and a minimal scattering of tickets was still available on Dublin Theatre Festival's website. By 12:20, you could see a random date pop up here and there, probably from people who couldn't get their payment method to go through in the allotted time. And by 12:30, there was not a single ticket left. Right now, our sector is about numbers. 188 days, the number of days the live events sector has been closed. 135 million euros is the number the National Campaign for the Arts is asking the government to fund Arts Council Ireland for in 2021. 9, the number of points in EPIC's pre-budget submission. 91%, the percentage of artists struggling with financial uncertainty. 3, the number of deaths due to COVID yesterday. 357, the number of new cases yesterday. 2, the level of the government's plan for living that Ireland is at right now and allows up to 50 patrons in pods of up to 6 in smaller venues where 2 metre social distancing is implemented. Outdoor events can have 100 patrons, but stadiums with a minimum capacity of 5,000 can have 200 patrons. Now, if we enter level 3, those numbers drop significantly, or worse, level 4, we are essentially back into a lockdown. But here in Dublin, we're in level 2.5 right now. We can tilt either way. The excitement of the 10-minute sale of tickets for The Great Hunger can easily turn to larger numbers of deaths, more restrictions, more waiting. The excitement of the over 700 events of Culture Night can quickly turn into 0 events. More restrictions, more waiting. So let's be smart. Follow the guidelines. Encourage your friends and family not to give up and to continue to follow the guidelines as well. If we don't, 188 could easily become 250 or 365 days that our sector is closed. We've got a long road ahead of us, a long road of recovery, but our actions as a sector, as a country, as people, will determine just how long this recovery will take. Here to leave us with a reading of Spark by Charles Bukowski is actor Eanna Grogan. Eanna is a graduate of the Leòr Academy and is a founding member of theatre company An Seo Anish. You may have seen him most recently in Keeping Vigil, written by Una Wall as part of the Space UK. Good night, everyone, and we'll see you next week at 7 p.m.
Hello. A big thank you to theatremaker.ie for having me on for their final poetic thought. The poem I chose was Spark by Charles Bukowski, and I like it because it's a pretty hopeful poem from a very bleak poet. I always resented all the years, the hours, the minutes I gave them as a working stiff. It actually hurt my head. my insides. It made me dizzy and a bit crazy. I couldn't understand the murdering of my years, yet my fellow workers gave no signs of agony. Many of them even seemed satisfied, and seeing them that way drove me almost as crazy as the dull and senseless work. The workers submitted. The work pounded them to nothingness. They were scooped out and thrown away. I resented each minute, every minute, as it was mutilated, and nothing relieved the monotonous ever structure. I considered suicide. I drank away my few leisure hours. I worked for decades. I knew that I was dying. Something in me said, go ahead, die, sleep, become them, accept. Then something else in me said, no, save the tiniest bit. It needn't be much, just a spark. A spark can set a whole forest on fire. Just a spark. Save it. I think I did. I'm glad I did. What a lucky goddamn thing.